The main thing that brought me into this field, the reason why I became a therapist, was because I want to meet people where they're at. And again, it's a phrase we hear all the time, but from personal experiences, professional experiences, just my life in general, I have seen over and over again where people fall through the cracks. They're not able to access therapy. They're not able to access treatment. They're not able to access help. I think it's really important to recognize that these barriers stop people all of the time from getting the support they might need. Come from a harm reduction background, which that's a whole other conversation, of course. But part of harm reduction, I think a lot of times people look at harm reduction the same way that they look at, it's this idea of like, oh, we're just giving people drugs on the street, or oh, we're just allowing people to do these things that we want them to stop doing. And that's not what harm reduction is. Harm reduction on a much larger scale, beyond even looking at substance use. Harm reduction is the idea of saying, okay, this person might not be here yet, and we're asking them to be here before we'll even give them help. So there's a lot of modalities, and there's a lot of therapists even that feel like if you're not here, then I'm not going to help you. If you're not on these medications, if you're not at this level of sobriety, and the way that I define how sobriety is supposed to be, if you're not able to make it into sessions at this time or pay this amount of money, then you don't get help. And there are people over here who need that help still. Harm reduction and meeting people where they're at, what that actually means to me is that we can move the bar and support people who are over here to help them get to this place so they can access these other resources and access this other support. Part of doing online therapy, part of having a virtual program, I think is its own form of harm reduction. We're supporting people who may not be able to access therapy for whatever reason on their own. Maybe they're working long hours, maybe they're caretaking for a family member. Allowing people to still tune in and still get support when in other circumstances, through other forms of treatment, they would never be allowed that access. That is bridging the gap. And I think that it is unfortunate how often we talk as clinicians and as therapists and as people working in this world about the importance of meeting people where they're at and just use it as a phrase instead of actually taking actions. Virtual therapy, talking about harm reduction, having this individualistic approach to what success is, understanding that for a client, they don't care about metrics, they care about how they feel and how they connect. They have their own goals, and we have to make sure that our goals match our clients' goals. That is what it actually means to meet someone where they're at. So I think it needs to come from action. And I'd say my philosophy as a therapist comes from that. It is taking actual action to meet people where they're at, not just talking about it. Yeah, I think there's this myth that exists that you go to therapy when you're at your worst. And it kind of fits into that broken concept again, where people feel like, if I'm not broken, then why would I treat myself? Why would I go to treatment? Why would I get therapy if I'm not a broken person? And one, got to move away from that concept of broken to start with, but also therapy does not work as well at that time. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It works regardless. Absolutely, if you are at your worst, you should get therapy. But I think a problem that I see a lot of times with clients and people that I work with is that they think the moment they start to feel better, that's where treatment ends. And I would actually argue that's when treatment gets its best. That's when things start to work its best. That's when therapy really starts to kick in. Because life cannot just be about not having bad things. If your whole goal in your life is that I'm avoiding bad, I'm no longer doing the bad thing, I'm no longer drinking, for example. If that is your goal, is that I am a person who no longer drinks. It's not that hard of a goal maybe to get once you move through treatment. Okay, maybe you get to that place, but what else? What's the end goal? There's a difference between avoiding bad and seeking out good. Saying, I want to live a life worth living. I want to have connections. I want to have support. I want to have a family that I can connect to. I want to have a career. Whatever these things are, whatever it is that you're wanting for yourself, that involves repeated actions of moving yourself towards a fulfilling life. That is a different thing than just avoiding bad. So clients come in, they avoid the bad. They stop drinking, or they move away from some of those worst symptoms. The depression starts to move away, and they're not experiencing that anymore, and they think that that's okay. And that's enough, I don't need therapy anymore. But what happens next time depression kicks in? What happens next time you lose a job, or a friend no longer wants to talk to you? What happens if you lose someone important in your life? Bad things happen all of the time. And if we don't have the tools reinforced within us to be able to manage those bad things, then we're probably going to fall back over. Going to therapy when you're doing well, which feels counterintuitive, means that you're in a place that you're more likely to be able to take in this information. Because the way that you always can look at this is something I talk with people about all the time, is that, are you more likely to do something good for yourself if you're feeling good or if you're feeling terrible? If you're feeling awful about yourself, if you're in a place where you don't feel good about yourself, you don't like yourself, then you're probably not going to do good things for yourself. If you're in a place where you feel positively, where you feel like you're moving in the right path, where you like yourself more than you ever have, that is where you're going to start using the type of skills that you need to build a life worth living. So therapy can't just be about avoiding bad. It has to be about creating good. A lot of times people will talk about moving into like a bad place in their life. It feels like a domino effect. And I hear that a lot of times people come to treatment, they're just like, it's like a domino. Like once the first bad thing happened, it just started knocking things over, right? I had that first drink and then I got into a fight with my girlfriend and then my girlfriend kicked me out and then I went to the bar and we go down the domino. That's true in the other way though. You can have a positive domino effect. I think I talk to clients about sometimes is the idea of like positive triggers. So we can have negative triggers, right? There's things that can trigger us in a negative way. I think it's also possible to have positive triggers, because if you look at what a trigger really is, it's like an external or internal stimulus that creates a response. So you can have a negative trigger. You can also have a positive trigger though. There's something that can trigger you in towards feeling calm, right? There's a stimulus that can create a reaction where you feel calmer, where you feel happier, where you feel safer, where you feel energized. So creating positive triggers in your life, creating positive habits, allows you to create that domino effect where, okay, I did something positive. I went for a run this morning, so now I feel more energized, which is maybe making me want to reach out to someone I haven't talked to in a while, because now I have the energy to actually have that conversation. Now I feel more connected to people in my life, which is making me feel more energized and more safe. So maybe I feel like I can do that task that's been daunting me because I just haven't felt confident enough to actually get through with it. We can create those dominoes in a positive way too. There's a concept too in DBT called state to trait, and it's this idea that if we do habits over and over again, positive habits, eventually it becomes ingrained. So one of the things I think I hear all the time from people is they will learn these skills in therapy, right? You're like, okay, do the breathing exercise, do the grounding exercise when you feel anxious. And they're like, okay, great. And then they have a panic attack and the words that therapist said to them a week ago that just fell out of their head. They don't remember that. They're not gonna remember in that moment because they're in this state of fight or flight. They don't remember something they learned one time. If you do it over and over and over and over again though, what will happen is it's just natural. You don't have to think about it. It just happens. You immediately, in that moment of panic, will go ahead and start doing that action. So you have to repeat those actions over and over again though. You don't build habits doing it once. I always tell clients, and this is true like in DBT, and when we do the DBT groups, this is usually where this will come up, is that if you want to run a marathon, you should not start practicing the day of. That is the worst time to try to run a marathon. You practice ahead of time. You stretch, you do short bursts, you do it over and over and over again, so by the time that you get to the stage of actually having to run that marathon, you're able to do it. You don't collapse 2 minutes in, like I probably would if I tried to do a marathon. So it's important to practice those things ahead of time. So it's the same thing. It's like you're literally training your brain, you're exercising your brain. So when you are in that state, when that panic attack comes up, you're not trying to access something for the first time in the state of terror. It's something that you've been doing over and over again. Your brain just says, oh, hey, let's do the thing we do every time we feel stressed out.